Hey guys, it's Natalie and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a rant review for A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. And if you guys watched my September wrap-up video, you would know that this was my first one-star book of the year, and I loathe this book with all my heart and soul, and I can't wait to tell you why. So last month in September, I read A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle because I wanted to read a handful of classics and see what I thought of them as an adult rather than as a child when I first read them. And I picked up Wrinkle in Time because this is considered a childhood classic, and I found it at the thrift store for like 99 cents, so I was like, why not? I'll give it a try, see what I think. And it was very disappointing. This was a heap of disappointment. So I did not like this book for a plethora of reasons, which I will go over each individually. The only thing I did kind of like about this book was that it doesn't have a clear setting, so it could really take place in any time or place. So I feel like that would have been a quality that would have made this book timeless had it been written well. So I'm going to go over all the reasons why I despise this book and everything like that. So if you aren't aware of the plot of A Wrinkle in Time, it basically follows the story of a girl named Meg and her little brother Charles Wallace, and they go on this fantastical adventure across time and space to find their dad, and they're accompanied by 3 magical beings and a random boy from school named Calvin. And so basically they just go on this big adventure to find their dad, and their dad went missing after he made this really big scientific discovery. So basically they're on this mission to find their dad, and yeah. I had my Goodreads review pulled up on my tablet and ready to go, and right as I was about to read it, Goodreads crashed magically. So I think that's the universe telling me that I need to not talk smack about A Wrinkle in Time, but you know what? This book was a wrinkle in my forehead, so I'm going to talk about it. So it's been 15 minutes, my tablet is finally loaded up, my Goodreads review is pulled up, we're ready to go. So the first thing that I don't love about A Wrinkle in Time is the plot. I like the plot itself. It's not bad. It's not a bad premise for a standard fantasy book. But the way it was executed was absolutely horrible. The structure of the plot is so messy. It's like, this book is literally a hurricane, and it's just like, everything that happens is one right after the other, and there's no breaks, no context, no background. Things just happen because apparently that's how childhood fantasy works. There's no context, there's no background, there's no need to ask questions because, you know what, it just happens. They had every single fantasy trope that I've ever heard of just shoved into this book. There was interdimensional travel, there was flying, mythical creatures, mind control, an all-knowing giant brain. Like, just everything you could possibly think of for a fantasy trope just like shoved into this book like it's nobody's business. It was mind-numbingly distracting. There was only one trope that I really liked in this book, and it was where they went to this one plan, I think it was called Casmataz or something like that, and everyone was mind controlled, and you know, everybody did everything at the same time. It was all on a schedule, like it was like rehearsed almost because everybody did everything at the same time. And I thought that was really cool, and I wish they would have explored that more instead of just doing a bunch of different fantasy tropes with no context and like no like softening between each one, if you know what I mean. Like, it was just like being punched in the face like every 5 seconds with like no space in between, and no really reason why either. You're just getting punched in the face. That was this book. So I understand that this book is a children's book, but the writing was extremely juvenile to the point where it felt like a 6th grader could have written it for an essay project, and it was just not good. Just the way things were described was extremely juvenile, and it just felt like something a 6th grader could have written. So I'm going to read you a couple of those very 6th grade descriptions. This sentence says, "The startled children looked into a great entrance hall of dull, greeny marble." Greeny. This next one says, "These twirling eyes within Charles Wallace's soft, round face made Meg icy cold, inside and out." Can you pick any more basic, mundane words than icy cold or soft, round face? Like, come on, come on. Despite the writing being really juvenile, it's like the author had an open dictionary next to them while they were writing this, and they just picked out a couple of big words and implanted them into the book in place of smaller words. Like, some of these words, if I was a child and I was reading this book, I wouldn't even understand it. It's like the author got her hands on some million-dollar words and just decided to like put them into random places in the book so it sounds like it's intelligent writing, but it's really not. If I was a third grader reading this, I wouldn't understand what liniment means, or supine, or obliquely, or myopic. I wouldn't understand what that means. So it's like the author's just trying to sound like that this book is intelligent and that it was written intelligently, but it's really the most basic writing style I've ever seen in my entire life. Besides the plot being hot garbage, the main character, Meg, was also a nightmare because she was full of so much self-hatred that it just made her unbearable as a character, and every sentence she said went something like this. Blank, Meg cried. Blank, Meg complained. Blank, Meg sobbed. Like, she was constantly crying or complaining or something like that, and it was just so annoying. She was so whiny and just so rude, and I did not enjoy her at all. The amount of self-hatred and self-doubt that Meg has as a character would be okay if they gave her a reason for it, or like she had a redeeming moment at some point, but she's just rude and annoying for no real reason, and she calls herself a monster. Like, there's literally a part where she calls herself a monster for her just being alive and existing. Like, she has no reason to think of herself like that. And like, what are you trying to teach kids? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's one part where she says, a delinquent, that's what I am, she thought grimly. That's what they'll be saying next. I don't want him to grow up to be dumb like me, Meg said. And then there's this one part where she's talking to her mom and she's like, maybe if I weren't so repulsive looking, maybe if I were pretty like you. So basically, Meg hates herself and she lets everybody around her know it, and she just, I couldn't stand her as a character. She was rude, she complained, she didn't do anything helpful, and like these three magical beings just like came out of nowhere and like manifested in order to help her find her father, and she was so ungrateful. Like, another thing I didn't like about A Wrinkle in Time is that the children who were being taken away by these mysterious magical beings didn't ask very many questions and weren't very weirded out or confused that, you know, three random magical beings wanted to take them across the universe, across space and time to find their father, because that's not weird at all. I'm not sure if this book is trying to tell kids that it's okay to leave with strangers because they promise you things, but that's sure what it seems like. There's no explanation for anything, no background, no context. Like, it just happens because, you know, you don't need to explain things to kids because, you know, you just have to say, it is this way because it is this way. Like, what? So the next thing I didn't like about A Wrinkle in Time is that there's an over-reliance for the characters to have a higher being, like a man or, you know, God or something like that, in order for their lives to be sane and normal. And that just really rubbed me the wrong way. And I'm not gonna be one of those feminists who like overanalyzes everything in a book because it's like not feminist enough, or it's like too feminist or anything like that. But there is definitely like a presence in this book of like over-reliance on higher beings like men or God or something like that, and it is written in this book to make it seem like men are the glue that hold together families and things like that, or God, and that's really not how everyone's lives work, and I really don't like that about this book. Like I mentioned previously, a boy named Calvin tags along with Meg and her brother on this adventure, and there's not really any reason why. He was just like, oh, I felt like I had to be here. Like, that's not a good reason. Like, why are you going? Like, there's no reason for you to be going. And it's just so that there's like a man present. And so there's this part where Meg is like comforting the boy Calvin, and this is what she says. If anyone had told her only the day before that she, Meg, the snaggle-toothed, the myopic, the clumsy, would be taking a boy's hand to offer him comfort and strength, particularly a popular and important boy like Calvin, the idea would have been beyond her comprehension. But now it seemed as natural to want to help and protect Calvin as she did her little brother. And then when they talk about the fact that the mom is like raising the kids on her own. Like, it's such a big deal that she's a single mom, and everyone's like, oh, he's probably off with another woman and things like that, and oh, she's such an emotional wreck because she doesn't have the hubby around. Like, it says, mother can't seem to control the way she feels. Like, what? Just because there's not a man in the picture means that she's like a tragic mess? Like, I watched a little bit of the movie, and in the movie the mom wasn't that much of a mess. Like, she wasn't like debilitated by her husband being gone, and it's just like written so poorly in this book to where there's just an over reliance on things. And throughout the book, Meg is talking about how when she sees her dad, everything's just gonna magically be okay. And I don't know, just like the reliance on a higher being or God or men in general just really bothered me, and I did not like that at all. Lastly, there's one chapter in this book called Aunt Beast, and they basically go to this planet and they're like, Meg gets injured and these weird alien creatures are taking care of her and nursing her back to health. And the way that it is written, the way that they're like healing her, it literally sounds like tentacle porn. And I'm not just saying that, like, I'm gonna read you guys some like excerpts from this, but I kid you not, when I read this I was like, how can children read this? Like, why is this a thing? Like, why are these like furry tentacle monsters like nursing a child back to health? Couldn't you just do like the standard alien trope? Because you did so many other basic tropes. Why can't you just do basic aliens? Why does there have to be furry tentacle monsters nurturing Meg back to health? I just did not love that. But again, her anger dissolves as the gentle warmth from the tentacles flowed through her. The three beasts stood around Meg, and it seemed that they were feeling into her with their softly waving tentacles. The movement of the tentacles was as rhythmic and flowing as the dance of an undersea plant, and lying there, cradled in the four strange arms, Meg, despite herself, felt a sense of security that was deeper than anything she had known. Now she could hold out no longer. She leaned her head against the beast's chest and realized that the gray body was covered with the softest, most delicate fur imaginable, and the fur had the same beautiful odor as the air. I hope I don't smell awful to it, she thought. As the tall figure cradled her, she could feel the frigid stiffness of her body relaxing against it. She had been stripped of her clothes, and something warm and pungent was gently being rubbed into her body. Sorry, what? If you think that isn't weird, you're kidding yourself, because that was literally tentacle porn in a children's book. And when I have children, I'm definitely going to read every book that they want to read before they read it, because I was not expecting that in this book. And look at it a different way if you will, but that's all I read when I was reading this. Despite this book being less than 250 pages, I struggled with it immensely because it was so mind-numbingly stupid and just hot garbage that I had to take so many breaks while reading it. I read one chapter and then I would watch a 30-minute YouTube video, and then I would read another chapter and then watch another 30-minute YouTube video because it was just that bad. I just had to take breaks. This took me like 3 days, and this was a 250 page less book, and it took me that long just because it was that bad. And I can't with this book. I definitely think this book would be viewed differently if you were a child and you had childlike wonder and it was so easy for you to suspend all disbelief. But in order for me to read this book, I literally had to suspend all disbelief, and I mean all disbelief, because everything that happened didn't make any sense. It happened one right after the other, and there was no context and no background, no world building. This was a mess. I just feel like the older you are and the more rationality you have, the less this book makes sense. And normally for fantasy books, I'm able to suspend disbelief and like just completely absorb the story and love it and the magic system. But with this one, I just couldn't. I hated this book with a burning passion, and I think it's definitely deserving of its 1-star review. I don't know if I'm just being nitpicky and over analytical, but that's just like who I am as a person. But to me, it just seemed like the plot was really messy. There was way too many fantasy tropes. There was no background or context or world building or anything like that. The main character was an absolute nightmare and just a ball of self-hatred. I didn't love the reliance on men and God and superior figures in this book. I just didn't really like it. I didn't vibe with it, you know what I'm saying? So I can definitely see why people like this book, because it is quite literally like the baseline of fantasy. Like, it's got the tropes, it's got the kid characters who are full of wonder and things like that, but there is so much better fantasy books out there than this one. Like, this is like the bottom of the barrel fantasy, and I just don't really know why it's considered a classic when there's so many better classics out there. Like, I don't know, I just don't love this book. I don't recommend it, and so yeah, Wrinkle in Time was my first 1-star book of the year, my first 1-star book ever, and you know, one book had to do it, and I guess Wrinkle in Time took the spot. It was competing for the spot of first 1-star book, so here we are, ladies and gentlemen. So I would say that concludes my rant review video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I know this wasn't exactly the most positive video in the world, but personally I really enjoy watching rant reviews because I love seeing other people's opinions on things. It just like interests me for some reason. So I thought it would be fun to make my own rant review video. I have another one that I already posted on my channel for A Catcher in the Rye, and I'll link it in the description down below if you want to see it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe down below, and hit the notification bell if you don't want to miss a single upload, and have a great day. Bye!